The assassination came with fire and screams. Steel clashed against steel, and shadows danced like monstrous puppets in the flickering light. Fen Xiao barely had time to rise from his bed before the door burst open, and Lu Yan was there, a shield of solid armor and unwavering resolve. He dragged the prince behind him, his body a living wall between Fen Xiao and the danger. A blade cut deep into Lu Yan's arm, a flash of silver against dark metal, but his grip on Fen Xiao never faltered. He fought with a fierce, protective grace, a storm of controlled fury, until the attackers were driven back and silence, heavy and suffocating, descended once more upon the palace. Later, in the quiet aftermath, Fen Xiao insisted on tending the wound himself. The servants were dismissed, leaving the two of them alone in the vast, candlelit bedchamber. He carefully, methodically, removed Lu Yan's armor piece by piece. His fingers, usually so steady with a calligraphy brush, trembled as they brushed against the warm skin beneath the cold steel. The air grew thick with unspoken things. Lu Yan inhaled sharply, his jaw tight, his gaze fixed stubbornly on the floorboards as if they held the answers to 1,000 questions. Fen Xiao's hands shook as he cleaned the gash. "Does it hurt?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lu Yan finally looked at him then, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. His eyes were dark pools of emotion, reflecting the candlelight and something far more profound. "Yes," he said, his voice low and rough. But it was clear he wasn't talking about the cut on his arm. Something irrevocable, something elemental, shifted between them in that moment of shared vulnerability. The unspoken rules that had governed their lives as prince and guard were shattered. From that night on, the prince's bedchamber became their sanctuary. Lu Yan no longer stood guard outside the door, he stood guard within it. Fen Xiao would dismiss his servants early, creating a pocket of time that belonged only to them. They built a new language, one spoken in lingering glances across a crowded room, and subtle smiles that were meant for no one else. When Fen Xiao painted, his brush strokes capturing the delicate beauty of a lotus or the fierce spirit of a dragon, Lu Yan would watch, his presence a silent, steady anchor. When Fen Xiao slept, Lu Yan would remain near, a quiet sentinel in the darkness, his vigil no longer a duty, but a devotion. Their first kiss was as hesitant as it was inevitable. It happened on a night when the moon was a silver sliver in the ink-black sky. Fen Xiao, emboldened by a feeling he could no longer contain, rose on his toes. Lu Yan, ever watchful, ever ready, lowered his head as if surrendering to a fate he had long accepted. It wasn't a clash, but a meeting, a gentle press of lips that sealed a silent pact. Lu Yan's hands came to rest on Fen Xiao's waist, his grip firm yet reverent, holding him as if he were something precious, something sacred. And in that embrace, Fen Xiao felt himself melt, his fingers clutching the dark, coarse fabric of Lu Yan's uniform, grounding himself in the reality of this man, this feeling, this moment. He had spent his life surrounded by silks and jewels, but nothing had ever felt as real as the solid strength of the man holding him. After that first kiss, touches followed, unfolding slowly, like the petals of a rare flower. They were never rushed, never crude. They were explorations, discoveries made in the hushed intimacy of the night. A hand lingering at a wrist, a thumb tracing the line of a jaw, fingers gently brushing through hair. They shared breaths in the darkness, their whispered words weaving a tapestry of secrets and affection. Lu Yan was always in control, his dominance a comforting presence, never cruel. He was the protector, the guardian, and Fen Xiao, the sheltered prince, found a new kind of freedom in that safety. He trusted Lu Yan completely, resting against his strength, allowing himself to be guided, protected, and held in a way he had never been before. It was a complete surrender, not of power, but of the heart. During those stolen nights, as the palace slept around them, Fen Xiao brought out his carving tools and took pieces of the finest white jade. With Lu Yan watching over him, he began to work. His hands, usually so delicate, were steady and purposeful. He carved to halves of a single circle, each a perfect mirror of the other. On the surface of the jade, he brought to life two phoenixes, their elegant forms facing each other, their wings outstretched as if in a perpetual dance. The phoenixes, symbols of loyalty and love, were a testament to their bond, a secret emblem of their shared heart. When he was finished, he gave one half to Luyan. It was a promise, carved in stone, that they were to parts of a whole, forever connected. But secrets in a palace are like water seeping through stone. Eventually, they find a way to the surface. Whispers began to circulate, quiet at first, then growing louder. Courtiers, with their sharp eyes and sharper tongues, noticed things. They saw the way Luyan's gaze always, unerringly, found Fen Xiao, a silent devotion that was impossible to hide. They saw the way Fen Xiao's reserved smile would bloom into genuine warmth only when his guard was near. The intimacy they had built in private began to cast a shadow in the public eye. Then, the inevitable happened. The jade pendant, worn by Luyan beneath his uniform, was discovered. The symbol of the phoenix, entwined with the prince's personal crest, was an undeniable declaration. Luyan was summoned before the emperor. The charge was unspoken but understood by all, corrupting the heir to the throne. The punishment was swift and absolute death. When the news reached Fen Xiao, something within him snapped. The gentle, scholarly prince was gone, replaced by a storm of fury and desperation. He shattered centuries of protocol, storming into the throne room unannounced, his fine robes trailing behind him. He fell to his knees before his father, the sound echoing in the cavernous, silent hall. His attendants froze. The courtiers held their breath. "I love him," Fen Xiao said, his voice ringing with a clarity and strength that no one, least of all his father, had ever heard from him. It was not a plea, it was a fact. "I will abdicate. I will renounce the throne. I will give you everything, just spare his life." The court was paralyzed. The emperor, man of iron will, stared at the son he thought he knew. He saw not a weak boy, but a man willing to sacrifice an empire for love. For a long, terrible moment, the fate of two lives hung in the balance. In the end, the emperor relented, but his mercy had a cruel edge. Luyan's life was spared, but he was to be exiled, banished to the furthest, most desolate border of the empire, never to return. Their farewell took place under the cold, indifferent light of the moon, in the same courtyard where their story had truly begun. There were no words that could encompass the depth of their sorrow. Luyan held Fen Xiao's face between his hands, his rough palms gentle against the prince's skin, his eyes memorizing every line, every feature, as if to carve the image into his very soul. "Live," he said, his voice soft, a desperate command. "Live well, even if it's without me." Fen Xiao's tears fell freely, tracing paths down his cheeks. He pressed his half of the jade pendant into Luyan's palm, closing his fingers on it. "So we are never apart," he whispered, his voice breaking. At dawn, Luyan mounted his horse. He did not look back. The great gates of the palace, which had once been a symbol of Fen Xiao's gilded cage, now became the barrier to his heart. Fen Xiao stood alone, watching as the gates groaned shut, the final, metallic sound sealing his fate. He stood there long after the sound of hoofbeats faded, a solitary figure against the rising sun. In that moment, as the last piece of his world was torn away, his gentle heart did not just break. It shattered. And from the pieces, something harder, colder, and far more dangerous began to form. Thank you so much for watching. If you were moved by Fen Xiao and Luyan's story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for the next part of their epic journey. We'll see you again soon.